I sat in her office, staring at the report. There is no doubt about it. Julianne is cheating on me, and has been doing so for quite some time. My suspicions arose that evening. She was drunk. Julianne doesn't drink often, but we went to the neighbor's house for a party they were throwing. Their son returned from the Navy and proposed to his girlfriend. There was a lot of fun, and we both drank more than we should have. Neither of us were completely drunk, but we were having a lot of fun, and when we got home, I was a little excited, to say the least. I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth and do my nightly chores, and by the time I was ready for bed, Julianne had fallen asleep, still fully dressed and only half laying on the bed. I went back to the bedroom, and seeing her so vulnerable, I ran my hand down her leg, hoping to wake her up and get some sex. She was only half awake and moaned. "Please, Ben," she muttered. "No more. My name is Steve. Ben is the guy she works with, who had dinner at my house, whose wife I know, and who we went on vacation with." Suddenly, I became completely sober. I thought all night, isn't this just a Freudian blunder? Maybe she's fantasizing about her coworker, or maybe they're actually doing something more than just working together. I thought about asking her about it the next day, but I knew that she would either laugh at me or explode at me with anger. Juliana is a scary sight when she's furious, but I need to know. I'd love to say that I'm the kind of man who could get his hands on surveillance equipment or order something from Amazon and tap her phone and purse, but that's not me. And according to most of the stuff I've read online about these things you can buy on Amazon, they don't actually work. I'm also not one of those people who has enough money to spend on private detectives. Oh, I'm doing okay, the house is pretty nice, and I'm on top of all my payments, but I don't have thousands of dollars lying around. I work as an accountant for a small healthcare IT company. I handle payroll and expenses. Not the most exciting job in the world, but it pays the bills. Or at least my half of the bills. Julianne also works at a local advertising agency. She creates copy for both online and radio advertising campaigns. True, she has not yet managed to make her way onto television. She earns a little more than I do, and we saved money together until we got to the point where she could take enough time off to have our first child. We have been saving money throughout our 4-year marriage. Sex with Juliana is amazing. Even now, after 6 years of marriage, it has not turned into a routine. I've heard of couples having sex once or twice a week or less, always on the same day, every week, and always in the same way. With us, everything is much more spontaneous. It is extremely rare for either of us to reject the other's proposal, no matter when or where, and she probably proposes to me more than I propose to her. We make love on average 4 times a week, and there is not a single place in the house where we do not have sex. This includes a garage, an attic, and even once, crawling under the floor. I can't even say that anything has changed in our relationship. We still make love as many times and as spontaneously as before. That's what I clung to, hoping that she just said the wrong name, simply because she works with Ben every day and is used to calling him by his name. It was already 4 o'clock in the morning, and I still couldn't fall asleep. Thoughts and actions continued to swirl in my head. How do I find out and what to do if she cheated? I generated one scenario after another where I find her in the arms of her lover and do everything from blowing her own brains out in the room as they look on in horror to blowing his brains out and then hers. In other scenarios, I just say goodbye to her and walk away in dignified silence, get into the car, and never see either of them again. But before all this happens, I need to know if she is cheating. I silently got out of bed and walked into the living room, where she dropped her purse when we were returning from the party. I looked through it, but didn't find anything. I don't know what I expected to find. Maybe condoms or love letters, but there is nothing like it. Her phone is locked, but that's not a problem. I watched her unblock it several times, so I entered the number and looked through the calls and texts. There were calls and also text messages to Ben. I have read them, but they are all work-related. Every single one of them. Of course, I had no idea about the contents of the calls, but there is still no evidence that she did anything wrong. I was just about to put her phone back in her purse when it slipped through my fingers and fell to the floor. Crap. I thought I might have broken it. I picked it up and carefully inspected it for cracks or chips, and was relieved to find that there were none. I turned it over and saw that something had slipped between the phone cover and the camera lens. It was like a credit card. I unsnapped the phone's cover and discovered that it was, in fact, a credit card. Moreover, it is her maiden name, and I knew nothing about her. Since I am an accountant, I am responsible for the family's finances. I don't manage the money, but I fill out all the forms, pay all the bills, including credit card bills, and file our taxes. How and why she still had that credit card was beyond me. However, this increased my suspicions and fears. I looked at her phone again and looked for the app from the credit card provider. As expected, it was found, hidden in a folder marked Spam, and filled with all the applications that come with the phone and which are impossible to get rid of. I opened the app and found that a password was required. Fortunately or unfortunately, Juliana had set it up for fingerprint authentication, so I carefully crept back into the bedroom and, with the utmost care, placed her finger on the screen. She didn't move. The application opened. Nervous that she might wake up, even though she seemed so out of it, I sent all the transcripts she had to the printer in my office downstairs in the basement. Once the confirmation was made, I closed the app, put the card back in its hiding place, and put her phone back in the case, which I tossed in her purse. Having looked into the bedroom again, I went down to my office and took the statements from the printer. Everything was there. Transactions took place twice a week, on Monday and Thursday, usually around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. $45 from a motel chain. There was the name of the network and the branch number. 10 minutes on the internet told me the motel was 6 blocks from the office where she works. So twice a week she visits the motel. Even though it was obvious why she was visiting the motel, I tried to think of other reasons why she might go there. Maybe they have some conference rooms there and she receives clients there. I laughed at myself. I'm grasping at straws. But even so, I wouldn't have believed it until I saw it with my own eyes. I looked back at the reports and found that these visits started about a month ago. A sudden wave of nausea hit me, and I barely made it to the toilet before I vomited. I was kneeling on the floor spitting into the basin when Julianne came in and leaned over to pat my back. "Did you drink too much?" she asked. "Me too. Shall I bring you something?" I shook my head, still clutching the papers in my hands and pressing them to my chest, desperately wanting her not to see them. "I just need some time," I said. "Go back to bed. I'll be there in a minute." "Okay," she said sleepily. She leaned down again and kissed the back of my head. I hit my forehead on the toilet seat as I pulled away from her, but she didn't seem to notice. I stayed in the bathroom for another 15 minutes until the nausea passed, and then I returned to my office and hid the statements among other papers. I knew there was no way Juliana would accidentally find them. She almost never comes into my office, although I have had her leaned over my desk more than once. As far as I know, she never comes there when I'm not at home. But what do I know? As far as I know, she faithful and a devoted wife. I returned to the living room but couldn't bring myself to go to the bedroom. Instead, I sat down on the couch and stared at the wall, thinking. Thoughts continued to swirl in my head. Only the most stubborn parts of me still tried to cling to the fiction that she wasn't having an affair, but I still wasn't quite ready to accept the reality. Still wanted more proof. I wanted to be completely sure. I also wanted to know what I would do if this was true. I know Ben. He is a friendly guy. He served in the Air Force, about 15 centimeters taller than me, and I have no doubt he could wipe the floor with me if he wanted to. I will really like his wife, Mary. She is a happy woman, always seeming to smile, and their 3-year-old Tabitha is an absolute joy. She calls me Uncle Stay, and has done so since I've known her. Of course, a divorce. That would mean we'd both lose. The house will have to be sold and the proceeds divided. We each have our own retirement accounts, and hers is a little larger than mine, since she earns more. Since we have no children, I could find myself in the enviable position of coming out of a divorce better than most men. I doubted that the court would award me alimony, but I was sure that they would not award it to her either. From a financial perspective, the only ones who benefit in divorce are the lawyers. I decided to go online and see how easy it is to get a divorce on your own. Maybe if Julianne doesn't put up a fight, we'll come out of this fairly unscathed, at least financially. Divorce. Is this what I want? No, God, no, I love Juliana with everything I have. But I can't stay with someone who didn't love me back. I would literally take a bullet for her. That's how much I love her. I doubt, however, that this is also true in the other direction. She takes something, but they don't shoot her with bullets. I felt another wave of nausea, but it went away after a couple of deep breaths. I decided to look on the internet about divorces, and then quickly fell asleep. Julianne woke me up with a glass of water and a couple of Tylenol tablets. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her face full of worry. I must look terrible. Looking at the clock, I realized that I had slept for about 3 hours. My head is pounding, my neck and back are hurting from a weird position on the couch, and I just found out my wife is cheating on me. "I feel better," I said. She smiled sympathetically. "Both you and me," she said. "I took some painkillers before the shower. Now my head is clearer. How much did we drink last night?" "Too much," I said, trying my best not to burst into tears and start yelling at her. "Go take a shower," she said. "You'll feel much better after this." I really doubted it. I drank the pills and all the water, stood up heavily and limping, went to the bedroom. I threw my clothes on the floor and got into the shower. "I could have put my clothes in the basket," Juliana complained, going into the bathroom and picking up the clothes I had discarded. "You could have kept your legs closed," I muttered in response. "Pardon me?" she said. I said, "I'm sorry," I said, loud enough for her to hear through the shower. "I was going to collect it when I got out." "It's okay," she said. "I did it. Don't forget we're going to Ben and Mary's for dinner later. I forgot. I was actually looking forward to it. Mary cooks amazingly and serves Michelin-level food. We have gotten into the habit of visiting them once every 2 months, and they come to us the next month. Julianne is a good cook and does a great job in the kitchen, but I always preferred going to them. Only today, I really didn't want to go. "I don't feel very well," I said. "I think I might have gotten sick with something." "Nonsense," she said. "You'll feel fine once the pills start working. Plus, Tabitha will be heartbroken if she doesn't see her Uncle Steve. We spent most of the day as we usually spend a Saturday. Once or twice, I saw a look in Julianne's eyes that said she was horny and trying to provoke me into sex. Each time I pretended not to notice and moved on to something else. I don't know if she noticed it or not, but I've been playing the I don't feel good card all day. This seemed to suit her. I wasn't sure that even if I tried to have sex with her, I would be able to. I have a terrible feeling that I'm either going to throw up on her or I just can't handle it. In my mind, I see Ben having sex with her and bringing her to ecstasy. My imagination doesn't help me at all. I spent most of the evening at Ben and Mary's in a depressed state. Tabitha came and climbed onto my lap, which was her habit when I was visiting them, and I hugged her. As soon as it became reasonable, I made her get down again, citing the fact that I was sick and did not want her to get sick too. "It's alcohol," Juliana said. "You are not sick." "I still feel sick," I said, "and I'm not drunk either." Ben looked at me with concern on his face. "Oh, buddy," he said, "do you need Tylenol or something?" I had an almost uncontrollable urge to punch him in the face, and then the image of him and Juliana appeared in front of me again. I barely made it to their bathroom before I emptied my stomach again. "Oh, baby," Julianne said, stroking my back again. "Maybe you're sick. Would you like me to call the doctor?" I shook my head. "They'll just say it's a virus," I said. "They'll tell me to drink water and call them in 3 days if I don't get better." "Come on," she said caringly. "Let's take you home." I heard her thank Ben and Mary for the food. When she said to Ben, "See you on Monday?" I vomited again. Luckily, I had already emptied my stomach. I spent Sunday in bed. This was a good reason to stay away from Julianne. I went into the guest room, ostensibly so that if it was a virus, I wouldn't infect her. and also so as not to keep her up all night. In any case, I slept for a good part of the day, but my dreams were tormented and torn. I lost count of how many times I woke up in a cold sweat. I think I must have witnessed Ben and Julianne go through the entire Karma Sutra in my dreams. "How are you feeling?" Julianne asked. It was Monday morning, and I was already up and dressed for work. We usually got up at the same time and left at almost the same time. Our offices are located approximately the same distance from our house, but in different directions. "A little tired," I said, "but I think I survived it." "Why don't you take the day off?" she said. "Make sure." "I can't," I said. "We have a big audit coming soon. I should be there." She nodded and then leaned over to kiss my cheek. I tried my best not to pull away, and I succeeded. "Okay," she said. "Let me know if you need anything. See you tonight." I nodded. We both got into our cars and drove off in different directions. I drove 1 block, turned the corner, and stopped. I called my boss and said I was sick and might not be in for a few days. "Okay," he said. "If you're not there after Wednesday, call again." I said I'd call and hung up. And he drove up to his office and then turned off the location service on his phone. I didn't think Julianne would check on me, but if she did, she'd see that the last place the GPS found me was at work. Then I drove to the place where she works and parked. I left the car in sight, went and sat in a cafe on the next street. I brought my laptop and sat by the window, as if doing some work. Ordered coffee and Danish pie. I suddenly felt hungry. Just after 12, I saw Julianne's car, leaving her company's parking lot. I'm sure she can't see me through the coffee shop window. I didn't run out into the street, having a good idea of where she was going. Plus, Ben's car is still in the parking lot. I didn't want to run into him. Then a thought occurred to me. I assumed that it was him she was meeting at the motel, mainly based on the fact that she said his name. What if it's not him? What if it was just an innocent mistake and I accidentally stumbled upon her affair with someone else? I was about to leave the cafe when I saw Ben's car. She was driving in the same direction as Juliana. I sighed. Is it from relief? Is it better or worse that she cheats with him? I left the cafe and went to the motel. Now I have a problem. I saw Juliana's car in the parking lot, but it's parked outside the motel office. Ben's car is parked in front of one of the rooms. I hoped they were in this particular room, otherwise I'd have to look through windows all over the motel. Perhaps I will be arrested. I approached the room and noticed that it was one of the few with closed curtains, which was a good sign. Or at least a sign that I had found the right number. Good is probably not the right word to use. The front of the motel is in the shade, which was lucky. If the sun were shining through the window, my shadow would be visible even through the curtains. I walked to the block and just sat down on the floor under the window. Since Ben's car was parked in front, I was not visible to anyone who wasn't on the path in front of the blocks. I listened and heard someone talking, a man and a woman, but I could neither identify their voices nor hear what they were saying. I turned on my phone camera and raised it over the edge of the windowsill. There was a gap of about 1/2 centimeter between the bottom of the curtains and the curtain rod. After all, this is a cheap motel. I was able to look into the room where I saw Julianne sitting on the bed and Ben standing in front of her. All doubts were dispelled over the next 10 minutes as I watched and recorded the beginning of their sex session. I saw enough. I can't make a porn film. I collected evidence. I played the video, which I now have on my phone, and the images weren't bad. I wanted to be sure that both parties could be identified, so I set the camera to maximum quality and took a dozen photos. Enlarged the image of faces. There could be no doubt who was there and what they were doing. I crawled away from the window on my hands and knees. I again had thoughts of doing something with his car, or with hers, but there was no point. I just need to get home and get things moving. It was 12:15. I was home by 2. By 3, I filled out and filed the divorce papers, printing out a copy for Juliana. Her signature was required. If she refuses, I will have to hire someone to serve her and go to court. If she signs, we can get a divorce in just 60 days. I paid off and canceled our shared credit cards. I opened a bank account in my name and transferred exactly half of the balance of our joint account into it. Created a report on our finances, listing all of our assets, including our house, retirement accounts, and savings, of which I also took half. Everything was taken into account down to the last cent. I could leave, I could take out my things, but this is my home. I wasn't going to leave until I had to. I couldn't afford to stay in a motel or hotel for a long time. I still need somewhere to live until this is all over. I moved all my stuff into the guest room, clearing out my closet and drawers. I downloaded the video file and photos onto my laptop and printed out pictures from both the video and photos. I also scanned all my credit card receipts. I wrote a letter to Mary stating what I had found and enclosing all my evidence. The departure was scheduled for 6 in the evening. I wanted to give myself a chance to talk to Juliana before Mary found out. She'll obviously tell Ben, who will, of course, call Julianne. I was ready. Unfortunately, it was still only 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and Julianne wouldn't be home for another hour. I wondered what Ben would do when Mary attacked him. The thought occurred to me that he might break in and attack me. I went to the garage and searched until I found what I needed. I've had this baseball bat since I was a teenager. It was a gift from my father, along with a ball, long lost, and a glove that seemed to have just been inhabited by a family of spiders. I took the bat, cleaned it, and carried it into the house, leaning it against the wall behind the sofa, close enough to the hand, but not immediately visible. I hoped I wouldn't need it. This time, Juliana really came early. She entered the house smiling. "Hi, honey," she said. "How are you feeling?" She looked at my face and the stack of papers in front of me. None of them were visible to her. "Is there something wrong?" she asked. "You could say that," I said. "Sit down. I have something to show you." She threw her purse on the floor and sat down on a chair opposite where I was sitting on the sofa. I handed her the divorce papers. She looked puzzled at first, but then her eyes widened. "What is this?" she asked. "It's written here, right here at the very top," I said. "I don't understand," she said. "Divorce? Why do you—" "Is it not?" I said. "Where were you today, Julianne?" "At work," she said. "You know it." "All day?" I asked. "Of course," she said. "So you didn't go out at all today?" "Steve," she said. "What's the matter?" I gave her the credit card statements. "So today was different from the last 4 Mondays and Thursdays when you went to the motel." "Where did you get them?" she asked. Her expression showed a mixture of fear and anger. "Does it matter?" I asked. "Were you spying?" she accused. "How could you?" "Indeed," I asked, with slight contempt in my voice. "Do you go there? How could I? For the last month, you've been sneaking to a motel twice a week. And am I wrong?" "Steve," she said, catching her breath. "I know what it looks like, but I promise you it's not like that. I had meetings with clients there. This motel—" "There are no conference rooms," I said. I checked. "But they rent out their rooms for meetings," she said. "It's much cheaper than using the conference center." "And what happens at these meetings?" I asked. "At the motel. So this is how you do business? On the back?" She jumped to her feet. "How dare you!" she almost shouted at me. "Do you think that I sell myself to clients for the sake of business?" "No," I answered calmly. "I think you're having sex with Ben. That's what I think." This stopped her. She sat down again. "Steve," she said. "No, I would never do such a thing. I love you. I don't know what you think you know, but you got it all wrong. I have meetings with clients, and in these meetings we do nothing other than professional business." "At the motel?" I asked. "Yes. Which are you paying for on a credit card that I don't know anything about?" "I keep it separate because it's easier," she explained. "The company pays the bill. Otherwise, we would have to pay tax on that too." That wasn't true, but I wasn't going to explain tax law to her at the moment. I shook my head. "So, today," I said, "when your car was in the motel parking lot, you were there with clients, at a business meeting?" "My car?" she said. "I was driving past the motel and I saw your car." "Yes," she said. "It was a business meeting." And I take it Ben was there too? I said, because his car was also in the parking lot. Of course, she said. Look, I know what it's like, but we were just having a business meeting there. I swear there is nothing between Ben and me. I love you. I would never cheat on you. I handed her a stack of photographs. She turned white and raised her hand to her mouth. Then I played a 10-minute video that I recorded on my phone. I set it up to stream to my TV. Even though the camera was slightly shaky, there was no mistaking who was there or what was going on. Where exactly were the clients at that moment? I asked. Tears began to flow from her eyes, and she started shaking her head. No, 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 she said. This cannot be. He promised that this could not happen. It's over, Julianne, I said wearily. We're done. Sign the papers, we will put the house up for sale, and in 2 months everything will be ready. Then you can go and date whoever you want. And I'll go and hide in a corner and try to regain some dignity. But he promised, she said. He said everything would be fine with us. I looked at her, puzzled. Who promised? I asked. Ben, she said. He said you'll never know, and if you do, you love me, so we'll be fine. Why does he think that? I asked. Why do you think so? I thought that you loved me as much as I loved you. Why did you do this to me? And even more, why did you expect anything other than what would happen if and when I found out? Juliana sat down, put her face in her hands, and began to cry. My heart broke when I saw her in this state, but I had nothing to offer her. I could not console the woman who took and trampled my heart. In a way, I enjoyed her pain, the fact that she was experiencing at least some of the heartbreaking pain that I felt. But at the same time, my heart broke even more when I saw her suffer. I heard my laptop beep. My letter has been sent. Why? I asked. Why did you do that, Julianne? What have I done to deserve this? Was I bad in bed? Did I ignore you? What? She shook her head, still sobbing. It was only supposed to happen once, she said. He promised me only once, but why even once? I asked. I screwed up, she said, still sobbing. At work. I almost lost a major client. Ben managed to work things out, but if my bosses had found out, they would have fired me. We'll survive, of course, but we won't be able to afford a house if I lose my job. We saved money to afford having children and would have lost it all. There was even a possibility that the client could sue me. The price of Ben's help, she said, was that I had to sleep with him. It was only meant to be one time, one day, and that's it. I didn't want to, but I had no choice. If he had shown my bosses what I had done, I would have been fired, and we would have lost everything. Why didn't you come to me? I asked. Even if it meant selling the house, we could manage. I couldn't, she said. There was no time. I did not have time. I had to make a decision, give him an answer here and now. I was so confused and upset, and I saw a possible way out. I convinced myself that once wouldn't hurt. You'd never know, and we'd be back on an even keel. Even if I believed you, I said. You met with him twice a week, for a month. Why keep coming back? He blackmailed me, she said. It was the first time he made a video. I didn't know there were cameras in the room. He said that if I don't continue seeing him, he will show the video to you. What about Mary? I asked. She knew? She shook her head. So he has as much to lose as you do if this comes out, I said. You expect me to believe that he would risk his own marriage to blackmail you? It is pointless. I'm sorry, Julianne, but I don't believe you. You voluntarily went to that motel room, and from what I saw on the screen, you were having a good time there. Now you're telling me he blackmailed you? No, I don't believe in that. But it's true, she said. I had no choice. There is always a choice, I said. If you loved me, you would trust me and come to me. Even if I take the first time as a forced instant decision, you could come to me later and tell me. I would be hurt, I would be angry, but maybe I would understand. I would do anything for you, Julianne. Anything. You destroyed me, destroyed my trust in you, destroyed my love. No, please, she said, sobbing harder. Give me a chance. Let me prove to you, show you how much I love you. Too late. There is nothing you could do or say that would make me believe that you love me, that you ever loved me at all. There was a crash and our front door almost flew off its hinges. Ben stood in the doorway and looked at me. "You little brat," he growled. "You had to get in my way, didn't you?" "What, Ben?" Julianne asked. "He sent photographs and videos to Mary. She kicked me out. She's divorcing me, and it's all that sniveling little shit's fault." "No, Ben," Julianne said. "It's all your fault. You forced me, you blackmailed me. Now your chickens have returned home. If you want to blame someone, look in the mirror." He reached behind his back and pulled out a gun, pointing it at me. "You are a little shit," he shouted and pulled the trigger. I still don't know what happened next. I heard Julianne scream and saw her jump up. She didn't go towards him trying to get a gun. Her goal was to get between Ben and me. I heard a shot and saw the bullet hit her in the chest. She dropped like a sack of shit. Ben's eyes widened as he saw her fall and he knelt down next to her. He barely had time to look up before the baseball bat I pulled out from behind the sofa hit him on the head. I went to the hospital with Juliana. She was unconscious and the bullet hit her just right of center. She lost a lot of blood. I sat in the back of the ambulance and held her blood-soaked hand. When we arrived at the ambulance, they carried her out and everything happened very quickly. I was taken to the reception desk where I had to provide our insurance information. By the time the paperwork was finished, she was already taken to the operating room. I sat in the waiting room looking at the floor, at my hands, and at my wedding ring, stained with Julianne's blood. I'd take a bullet for her. A thought flashed through my head. I remembered thinking that way when I first suspected her of cheating. It was an indicator of how much I loved her, that I'm ready to take a bullet instead of her. And that's exactly what she did, for my sake. The scene repeated itself in my mind. She knew there was no way to get to Ben, to take the gun. Her motive was to put herself between him and me. We all knew he would shoot. She was ready to sacrifice her life to save mine. "Uncle Steve?" Tabitha shouted, as I entered the house that had been Ben's house 3 months ago. Ben was in jail awaiting trial. Because of my blow to the head, he was hospitalized for a week, but he was released under police supervision. He faced a long prison sentence. When I entered the kitchen, Mary raised her head. She smiled at me, then came over and hugged me. "How did everything go?" she asked. "Terrible," I replied. After lunch, I testified for the prosecutors who will be prosecuting Ben's case. They were evil. They figured the defense would be nasty and tried to get me to say something that would benefit their client. I was determined not to do this. Was this the last time? A voice came from behind me. I turned and smiled at Juliana. "I think yes. They told me that they have everything. They're going to charge him with attempted murder, not just assault with a deadly weapon." I walked over to where she was sitting at the kitchen table. She bowed her head, and I kissed her. The path for Juliana was difficult. A month in the intensive care unit, and another month in the respiratory ward of the hospital. Even now, she cannot fully take care of herself. That's why I left her with Mary while I went to the lawyers. Mary turned out to be a godsend. She looks after Juliana when I have to run errands or work. I managed to convince my boss to let me work from home most of the time, so I'm with her all the time. But sometimes I need to get away, and on those days, Mary and Tabitha come to our house, or I bring Juliana here. It took me almost a full month, while Julianne was unconscious on the ventilator, to decide what to do. Mary found a recording on Ben's phone of his first meeting with Juliana. When she showed it to me, I wanted to go and hit Ben's head with a baseball bat again. There were 2 files on his phone. One lasted about 10 minutes and showed Ben and Julianne having sex. But another, much longer, unedited one showed her crying and begging him not to do it. It is as clear from the second file that she is being forced as it is from the first that she is there voluntarily. It was cleverly edited. So what Julianne said, at least about the first time, was true. And given the edited file, we can assume that she was telling the truth about other cases as well. But when it came to evidence, the first file became the basis in this case. The moment Juliana threw herself in front of bullets for me. The very measure that I myself used to show how much I love her. I couldn't ignore it. I'd like to think that it was that night that I whispered in her ear that I believed her, that I loved her, and that if she just woke up, we could be together again. I'd like to think that was the turning point. Until this moment, doctors were not sure whether she would survive or not. I like to think that I gave her a reason to live, that just as she saved my life, I saved hers.